All right, guys. So we're going to get a little deeper into the Chris Grier saga here because it's very easy at a time like this to just be like, well, Greer's been here for 6 years. We haven't won anything. He's garbage. Get rid of him. Burn the house down. But I want to kind of do a little digging. Like, is that for real? Has he really been garbage? Or are we just having recency bias because we came off one of our a very disappointing season when we expected great things? So I want to dive. I want you guys to help me, but I do have all the picks if you need any of them. I want to dive into like what he did great, right? Some of the highlights, right? Trading Laramie Tunsil for a king's ransom.
Yeah.
Drafting Minkah Fitzpatrick in the first round, who's for all intents and purposes, even though he's no longer with us, he's an all-pro safety, right? He drafted guys like Christian Wilkins, who went on to get paid. Andrew Van Ginkel, who we all miss dearly, right? Tua Tagovailoa, the best quarterback we've had since Dan Marino. Austin Jackson, Noah Igbenogany. We were just talking about these guys. Brandon Jones. Those guys were all in the same draft, by the way.
Crazy. Yeah.
Absolutely insane.
Jalen Phillips. Yeah.
Right? You look at the next draft, Waddle, Phillips, Holland, all in the same draft. And then the next year, he trades the first 2 picks for Tyreek Hill. 1,700-yard seasons back-to-back. I think that's pretty good. And then this recent season, Chop Robinson, Patrick Paul, Jalen Wright, Malik Washington all made meaningful contributions. That's 4 out of 7 draft picks.
Well, Ethan Bonner, too, I think, outside of the injury,
and undrafted guys. Yeah. I haven't even gotten into the undrafted guys yet who, we have Kader Kohu starting at nickel corner, who's been fantastic. Well, he's been up and down, but when he's actually playing the position he's good at, he's been fantastic.
Nick Needham, 2019.
Right. Yeah. But all of these positive, impressive moves, it's not always that way. Right? I mean, we traded for Josh Rosen, a pretty high pick, despite nobody else wanting him.
Was that a second rounder, right? I think.
Yeah, something like that. This recently trading for Shaq Lawson, and then he retires. Right?
Yeah. Can we put that on Grier?
I mean, you're having conversations with this guy, right?
Yeah, I guess what you can put on Grier is, how did you not know that, right? You have a New York City legal team worth of people to look into players before you make any kind of financial contributions to them. They dig into their past, their history. They call their friends. They call their families. They look on their social media. They do a complete. I mean, when you're giving somebody $40 million or whatever, whatever you're going to pay, insert player's name, you want to make sure you do your Reader's Digest on them at least. And where you can't knock them because a player was like, you know what, I'm just not feeling it. I'm old. I want to be done after a couple off-season practices. How did you not at least see it coming? You know what I mean?
Right. And then I'll cap off the kind of a few downers because I want you guys to do most of the talking, but I do want to get to the highlights and the lowlights. That 2022 draft where we traded for Tyreek Hill, we didn't get a single good prospect out of that draft. Channing Tindall, Eric Ezekanma, Cameron Good, Skylar Thompson are all trash. Yeah. First round pick. How about Charles Harris? Does that ring a bell?
Oh, yes, it does, unfortunately.
That was Grier?
That was Grier. He started in 2016. That was the 2017 draft.
Yep. Yeah. 2016, he got Xavier Howard, which was a good one too.
2016, he got Laramie Tunsil, Xavier Howard, Kenyon Drake, Jakeem Grant. Again, 4 out of 7. That's pretty good. So he's had a lot of good. He's had some negative. I feel like the negatives in the draft weren't as huge as I expected them to be when I went and revisited this.
So that's the biggest thing, Anthony, is that, and I'm not trying to cut you off here, but like you went over a lot of positives in the draft. You went over a lot of guys that turned into bona fide, if not NFL stars, bona fide NFL starters, bona fide, NFL players. Even if we're not talking about guys that didn't do it in Miami, like Minkah Fitzpatrick and Noah Igbenogany. No GM bats 1,000 in the draft. And even the best of GMs have drafts where they just whiff, whiff after whiff.
Our boy Howie Rosen says he aims for 50%.
Yep, exactly. And based on what you just said, Anthony, I'd say Chris Grier is batting about 500 in the draft. So, based on just that, and I'm going to turn this over to Josh and Taylor, but based on just that, for me personally, I don't have a problem with the way Chris Grier is drafted for this team. I don't have a problem with his draft picks.
Who do you want to go, Taylor or me?
Well, this is Anthony's segment.
I wasn't sure if you were done or not because you said you were going to throw it. I'll take it. That's okay.
No.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. So, Josh, I've heard from you a ton, but I haven't heard from Taylor a whole lot. Yep. So, Taylor, I'll have you start us off, man. What are your feelings now that we've had a chance to sit down and kind of research and look into Chris Grier? How has he been? Like, what conclusions did you come to?
Well, after looking, I didn't go as far back as you because to me, the management structure of what the Dolphins have been, there's no nice way I could say this without having some expletives. So I'm just going to leave it be. So about 2019 is when the Band-Aid got ripped off, right? And we went with Flores and Chris Grier was officially GM. There's no Tannenbaum to oversee him.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to go through every pick, but I want to go through the 2022 and 2023 draft real quick. We had Channing Tindall, Eric Uzakama, Cameron Good, and Skylar Thompson. In 2023, we had Cam Smith, Devon Achane, Elijah Higgins, and Ryan Hayes. That is 2 draft classes.
And only 2 good players.
Okay.
And you wonder, people talk about, this team has no depth. No, duh. We had 8 players in 2 years. And granted, there's many reasons why we had those, or why we didn't have those picks. Because of a Tyreek Hill trade, because of the
Bradley Chubb
pick, Bradley Chubb trade, all that stuff. But when you look at those drafts, it is really easy to figure out, why don't the Dolphins have depth right now? Why are we sitting here in 2024 with 10 picks, and we got to nail it? It's because of these 2 drafts. That's really my takeaway.
He has certainly struggled recently in the draft. I would say that. I do also think that you'd be kind of remiss not to go a little further back. But listen, I mean, the NFL, the average lifespan of an NFL player, not lifespan, but time in the league is 3 years. I'm giving these guys only 3 years to live. Their average time in the league is only 3 years. So if we only look back 3 years, then that 2022 and 2023 drafts, I mean, he's 1 for 8, you could argue, with Achane being the only good one. Although that tight end, we did try to get in the practice squad. Arizona scoops him up, and he played meaningful snaps for Arizona this year.
Yeah, Higgins.
Yeah.
Elijah Higgins. He would have been the second best tight end on this team.
And Ryan Hayes was a developmental guy, and he's been kind of on and off the Dolphins practice squad. 7th round pick. Again, not a great pick. Cameron Good played some snaps for the Dolphins last year. Granted, it was due to injury. I agree with you, Taylor. Those were not good drafts. But again, he didn't have a lot to work with in those drafts.
No, I'm not saying he did either. It's just something to where if you're looking at the tenure of Chris Grier, you start to figure out around that 2022 year, okay, this is why the team roster construction is the way it is.
Yeah, and I think to your point, I think what people also forget is that we were all in. We were in our Super Bowl window.
Yeah.
So he was, FTP in 3 straight off seasons. We don't need these picks, right? Yeah. So, I mean, I also think that, and there is validity to that to a certain point, right? You're sacrificing future depth to throw Pro Bowl level high-end quality talent on your team to make a run. The problem is some of that high-end talent wasn't the right choice. Injuries, Tua going down and not learning how to do things, a coaching. I mean, there's a ton of stuff that goes into these decisions, but yes, you cannot overlook the fact that he basically wasted two full drafts, right? Excuse me.
Yeah. Whether it's his fault or not, which I agree with you, Keith. I don't think you can really put that on Chris Grier because the amount of picks we had is still something to where you look at that and you go kind of wasted 2 years of the draft.
But I see what you're saying, Taylor. He wasted 2 years of the draft through his own actions. Because he traded for Bradley Chubb, because he traded for Tyreek Hill and Jalen Ramsey, and because I don't know if he was the one. That was probably Stephen Ross that was involved in that whole tampering scandal.
It was Stephen Ross. He brought Brady to a yacht or something. Isn't that what it was?
Yeah.
Or was it Peyton? One of the two.
No, it was Brady. It was definitely Brady.
Yeah. Well, it was both, wasn't it? Well, he wanted Peyton and Brady to sign with the Dolphins, which we kind of sang Stephen Ross's praises earlier. He did kind of screw us on that one.
Yeah,
it's hard to judge Chris Grier. I mean, because if you're just looking at the draft, I mean, I have gotten to like a 42% hit rate, and my rating is based off of, did these guys start significant snaps for any team in the NFL? So that's how I counted it. But everybody has different ratings, right? But then you look at the other stuff, right? Trading for Tyreek Hill was, for all intents and purposes, a home run. I know recency bias suggests that we're all pretty mad at him because he's being a fool right now, but his first 2 seasons with this team,
incredible.
He's playing like a superstar, the superstar that he is. Trading for Bradley Chubb didn't work out the way we thought it would, but I can't name.
But there were times last year. There were times last year, Anthony, where he was
unstoppable.
Yeah,
right,
he was dominant.
That's what I'm saying. Is recency bias is real, right? We didn't see Chubb all season, so now the Dolphins fan is saying, "Well, what a waste that was." And okay, you have some validity to that. This was an off-injured player that we traded probably more than we had to get. But he did play really well for us when he did play for us. Jalen Ramsey, as much as I dislike him, has been our best corner for 2 years probably. So like those are good trades. Like no trade works out 100%. There's a reason they're being moved by the team they were on previously.
Yeah. If you're a team in a Super Bowl window and you think as an organization that you have 2 or 3 years to capitalize and try to make a run, you make these trades 12 times out of 10.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You have to, right? You don't have to. Sorry. I shouldn't say you have to, but you can understand you can understand why they do it. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Now his free agent moves, I feel like this year was really good, but he's left a lot to be desired in the past. I mean, Ryan Fitzpatrick, I thought was a good move. We had a solid backup, and Brian Flores ended up making that really weird and awkward. We had Byron Jones. We signed to that big contract that didn't end up working out for us. Kyle Van Noy, who liked being here, and then we cut inexplicably, and he went to the press and was really mad about that whole thing. If you guys remember, we signed Will Fuller to a 1-year deal at one point in time.
How dare you bring that back up?
I don't remember if he even played. But
he had a hurt finger, Anthony. He couldn't play with a hurt finger.
Listen, all that to say that even though recently he's been bad at the draft, he's compensated well in free agency. Teron Armstead, Connor Williams, Melvin Ingram, they all were big contributors. Deshaun Elliott, a big contributor. Jordan Poyer, as much as we hate him, played a ton of snaps.
Get out. Get out.
Jonnu Smith, Jordan Brooks, Calais Campbell, Dodson. He jumped on Dodson as soon as he was cut. Like
I think within like the hour.
Right. I just don't think we can deny that in some way, shape, or form, Grier does have a good eye for the players that could potentially be good. I mean, look at his undrafted free agents. We have how many of them playing meaningful snaps for us? Nick Needham, Kader Kohu, right?
He's been an undrafted free agent.
What's that?
Like he's been an undrafted free agent guru. I mean, like there's no other way of saying it.
Isn't our starting left guard an undrafted free agent?
I mean,
Robert Jones.
He has hit, and that's not a great example. That is a shit stain on his record.
But if you're starting as many games as you have as an undrafted free agent,
fair.
That is impressive.
Robert Jones would have been a good depth piece for this line if we, if Isaiah Wynn had actually started and played, and Robert Jones would have been the perfect depth piece for this line.
And then Storm Duck this year. I mean, he's really good at finding these corners that
And then the one that was injured, that was that I really liked. That I'm drawing a blank on his name.
McKinley?
No,
or
he's a safety cornerback.
Or McMorris.
McMorris.
Okay.
Patrick McMorris. Is that what it is?
Well, he was a 6th round pick. He wasn't undrafted.
I thought he was undrafted. But again, like the late round in the undrafted, I think Chris Grier shines.
Yeah.
Doing the research for the show enlightened me a lot, right? Because I am not a big Chris Grier guy, right? I mean, I'm not opposed to Chris Grier, but I think he's middle of the pack, right? In my mind. He's a middle of the pack GM. Okay, you kind of get what you get. But doing the research on what were successful draft picks, and in my criteria, I did not account for just playing for the Dolphins, right? Because if the player went on to another team and crushed it, that player was still good. It just sucks that he's not with us.
Which means it was proper evaluation by Chris Grier.
Exactly. And the list, if you, and I have them side by side on my OneNote sheet, the list is almost 3 times as long for players that I thought were successful versus players that I thought were misses. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And yes, free agency is kind of hit or miss. Who the hell knows, right? What you're really going to get in these players once they get. A lot of these players are getting either their first or their second big contract. They have life-changing money. I mean, you never really know how that is going to react, right? So
there's a reason why they're free agents in the first place.
Exactly. And, I think where my questions with Grier come in is, and I'm not saying this is solely in his court, but the amount of money paid to some of these players, right? Yeah. I can understand resetting the market when you for the wide receiver position when you brought Tyreek Hill in. I can understand that. And to Anthony's point, over 1,700 yards in 2 straight seasons, phenomenal. But then you go and re-up him just because he's throwing a temper tantrum 3 years later after giving him market reset money because he wants to be in the same conversation. You don't extend him. Excuse me. You pull money from the back end of the contract just to make him feel better, but that screws you if you try to get rid of him. It's those kind of decisions where you start seeing the sheen of Chris Grier kind of start to fade, right? And it's those little things that make a difference when you get to a point with a player, for example, like Tyreek Hill, where you want to move on from him, but now you can, theoretically you can this offseason, but in the context of this conversation, that makes it harder to move on from a player than it should be. And, you look at, I just got done bringing in Tyreek Hill and Bradley Chubb and Ramsey as the 3 most recent big additions. Did you really need to market reset all of them?
Yeah.
Really? I don't think you needed to.
But that's what you do when you trade for a guy like that.
But not always.
Yeah.
Not always, right? And you can definitely re-up them and definitely give them a substantial amount of money. But you don't have to give them market resetting money just because they asked for it.
Yeah.
And that's frustrating because of how savvy he really I'm glad we're also having a nuanced conversation about this because I'm just like you, Josh. I went into this research. I was like, I don't know, whatever. And then you kind of come away with it going, no, a lot of this is good. It's not all bad. And I'm not a Chris Grier apologist by any means. But you look at the Lemery Tunsil trade, which
historical. That was a historical trade.
Yeah.
Right? Tunsil, Kenny Stills, a 4th rounder, a 6th rounder to Houston for a 2 first, a second, and 2 players. I keep forgetting that we got 2 players in that trade.
I thought it was 3 first. Wasn't it 3? Or was it 2?
It was 3, I believe.
Yeah, it was one that year and then 2 additional years.
But either way, the Niners trade a year or 2 later. That's another massive.
Oh, that's
deal.
Right. Gee, I forgot about when we traded down with the Niners.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. We had the number 3 overall pick. We traded to the Niners for their first, which was 12th overall, a 2022 first, a 2022 third, and a 2023 first. That 2023 first ended up going to the Broncos for Bradley Chubb.
Yep.
That's what the nuance in this Chris Grier conversation comes from is okay, you can see some hits, you could see some misses in the draft. The trades are spectacular. Got a 5th for Jeff Wilson at the last second. We needed Jeff Wilson that year. We really did.
Yeah.
But it's whenever you get to the stuff like the contracts and Jalen Ramsey getting that extension and being the highest paid corner and he's on the bad side of 30. It's not a good deal.
Yeah, I think even getting a first for Minkah Fitzpatrick, because everybody could see it was a very public breakup. It was a very public, Minkah was, I'm out, I'm not playing, that's it, I hate this coach, I'm done, right? and they still got a first-round pick from Pittsburgh, no less, who doesn't trade their assets for anything.
Yeah.
So that was impressive. So last thing I'll ask you guys on the topic, and then we need to move on to Josh's amazing takes from the deep end segment. Now that we've done the research, now that we've taken a step to breathe, to just take it all in, do you feel like Chris Grier is in the top half of the league in GMs or the bottom half of the league in GMs? Now, remember, there's 32 teams, so there is no middle. You got to pick one or the other. Keith, I'll start with you.
Based on what we talked about today, I'm going top half.
All right, Taylor?
Yeah.
Sorry, just real quick, because I know we want to move on.
Yeah, you're right.
I'm going to regret saying it, but top half.
And Josh?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's even close. Top half. I mean, I do think he's a good GM. I think he gets crapped on a lot.
I think he's right on the precipice. I'd put him at 16.
Okay.
He's right there.
You went in the middle.
So you're going top half.
I'm going top half, but just barely.
All right.